75. The previous question is ordered.
The House will be in order. 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 The Chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. I have the honor to transmit herewith a facsimile copy of a letter received from Mr. Jacob Corbin of the Elections Division of the California Secretary of State's office, indicating that, according to the unofficial returns of the special election held July 12, 2011, the Honorable Janice Hahn was elected representative to Congress for the 36th Congressional District, State of California. With best wishes, I am, signed sincerely, Karen L. Haas.
The House will be in order. We will not proceed until the House is in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the gentlewoman from California, the Honorable Janice Hahn, be permitted to take the oath of office today. Her certificate of election has not arrived, but there is no contest and no question has been raised with regard to her election.
Without objection, so ordered. Will Representative-elect Hahn and the members of the California delegation present themselves in the well of the House? And will all members rise? And if the representative-elect can raise her right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter, so help you God? Congratulations. You are now a member of the 112th Congress. Without objection, the gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The residents of California's 36th District chose Janice Hahn last week in a special election, and our esteemed colleague, to succeed our esteemed colleague, Jane Harmon. Jane will be missed, but we welcome Janice to Congress, where she will undoubtedly serve as a powerful champion for her constituents. She begins her career with a strong record of fighting for jobs, environment, and working families. As a City of Los Angeles councilwoman, she led successful initiatives to improve her community, created jobs by standing with unions and advocating for development to promote tourism. She learned to clean the air. She worked to clean the air in L.A. by addressing the port's pollution and the strong diesel truck emission standards. She stood with working families through her support of living wages and health care. She carries on the legacy of her father, Kenny Hahn, a former Los Angeles County supervisor and passionate civil rights advocate. As United States Congressman, Janice will surely add more victories to her already long list of accomplishments. She's joined today by her son Danny, daughter Katie, son-in-law John, and 3 grandchildren, Brooklyn, McKenna, Hosea. Please join me and all the California delegation in welcoming Janice.
If the gentlelady could suspend momentarily, and without objection, the gentleman from California, Mr. Dreyer, is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to ask for my own 1 minute. I'm going to ask my California colleague, Mr. Stark, to yield to me. Will the gentleman yield? I thank my friend for yielding, and let me join in behalf of my Republican colleagues from California and across the country in extending hearty congratulations to our new colleague, filling the great shoes. They're not huge shoes, of course, but succeeding our good friend Jane Harmon. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that Janice Hahn comes from a family that has had a great long tenure of public service. Her father, Kenneth Hahn, served as a supervisor in the county of Los Angeles, a huge job. They represent about 3 times as many people as we, Mr. Speaker. And her brother, of course, Judge, has served as the mayor of the city of Los Angeles. And I also want to say that our new colleague has come here at certainly an extraordinarily crucial time in our nation's history and will face many challenges ahead. But I want to say that our thoughts and prayers go to our new colleague. Not everyone knows that literally on the eve of the election, her mother, Ramona, passed away suddenly. And I know that she, as all the members of the Hahn family, would be extraordinarily proud of this moment, and we extend hearty congratulations, and I thank my colleague for yielding.
The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, Leader Pelosi, and honored members. It is wonderful to be here today representing the 36th Congressional District in California. I'm honored and thankful for this incredible opportunity to serve here in the United States House of Representatives. I'm humbled to be the first Los Angeles City Council member elected to Congress since Ed Roybal almost 50 years ago. I was born into public service. My dad, Kenny, represented the people of Los Angeles for 46 years. My brother, Jim, served as mayor and is now a Superior Court judge. And our dad taught us that serving others is more than a job. It's a calling. It requires honesty, hard work, and most of all, the courage to do the right thing. In 1961, a young and controversial civil rights leader named Martin Luther King, Jr. came to Los Angeles for his very first visit, and not a single elected official wanted to greet or welcome him, except for one, my father. And that's where I got my political courage. And we know that Americans are counting on us now more than ever to solve their problems, and working together with courage and in good faith, I believe we can and we will. This past week, I experienced a wonderful victory, but also a profound loss. My dear sweet mother passed away unexpectedly the day before the election. She was the driving force behind our family, and this is the first accomplishment I've ever had and not been able to share with her. She was looking forward to seeing this day, and I know both she and my father are looking down today smiling. And for that, I want to thank everyone who made this possible. Thank you to my children, Katie, Danny, and Mark, my son-in-law, John, my 5 beautiful grandchildren, 3 of whom are here today, McKenna, Brooklyn, and Josiah. And thank you to Leader Pelosi, Democratic Whip Hoyer, and the California delegation. I want to thank my good friend Jane Harmon for her years of service to this Congress and to this nation and to the people of the 36th District. And when she stepped down, I told her to leave the initials on the door. And thanks to my campaign staff and volunteers and the voters, I'll work every day with every bit of strength that I have to serve you. I look forward to working with each and every one of you, getting to know each and every one of you. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless our beautiful country. Thanks.
Under Clause D, under Clause 5D of Rule 20, the Chair announces to the House that, in light of the administration of the oath to the gentleman from California, Ms. Hahn, the whole number of the House is 433. Without objection, 5-minute voting will continue. The question is on adoption of House Resolution 355. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
For recorded vote on the closed roll.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. It's a 5-minute vote.
A procedural vote on passage of the rule that will guide debate on the Republican debt and deficit plan. The rule calls for 4 hours of debate with no amendments allowed. Earlier today, a first-term House member, Representative Hanson Clark, got up on the House floor and urged all Americans to stop borrowing and pay off their debt because he says the government is unable to do it. During his 5-minute speech, the Michigan Democrat cut up a number of credit cards. We're going to watch it now.
Mr. Speaker, and to the American people, I wanted to address the debt that is killing jobs in this country, and it's robbing Americans of their financial security. And then I also will propose how we get out of that debt to really create jobs and restore financial security to all Americans. Now, the federal debt is important. We've got to do everything we can this week and the next week to avoid a government default. Because if the government defaults on its obligations, at the very least, that's going to cause all of these interest rates to rise on the borrowing that the American people hold as debt, and that could drive people further into financial distress, into foreclosure, into bankruptcy. But the debt that is crushing the American people is the mortgages, the student loans, the credit cards that people have to bear. Now, I'm from Detroit, and jobs are important. In fact, I represent one of the regions in the country that have the highest unemployment rate. But as equally important as jobs are to the economy, we've got to get Americans out of debt. I know folks that are working right now. They have jobs. They're earning income, but they have no money because their income is going to pay off bills. It's going to creditors. They can't provide for themselves. They can't provide for their families. They can't provide security for the future because they're in debt. And this American personal debt is also costing this U.S. economy jobs. Because when people don't have money to save, money to invest, they can't really spend it on businesses who could hire more people and create more jobs. My point is this, and you know, I'm speaking to a few of the members of Congress that are here right now, but most importantly, I'm speaking to you, the American people, because maybe you can help me drive this Congress to address the real debt that's threatening this democracy and our economy. This country's economy will not rebound strongly. We will not easily get out of this recession as long as Americans are underwater on their mortgages, defaulting on student loans, maxing out on their credit cards. If we want to create jobs that will truly be sustainable and help provide families with real financial security, this Congress must realize that when the American people are in debt, so is this country. So here's what I'm urging today. I'm going to have a resolution I'm going to put forth, that as we work to prevent a government default on its obligations, that we also have to work to make sure that Americans don't further default on their debt. So I am asking, in as strong as possible way as I can, for this Congress on certain loan obligations to immediately work to cut mortgages down to the value of your home, to forgive student loans. Because the only way, the most powerful way that we can restore our economy, strength, to create jobs that are sustainable, is to help Americans get out of debt. Now, Congress has an obligation to do so because we changed the rules over the past decade or so that put Americans in all this debt. But just as Congress has an obligation to act, I've got to talk to you, the American people. You've got to act too. You've got to take responsibility. You want this government to get out of debt? Then you get out of debt personally. Stop the spending. Stop the borrowing. Stop overconsumption, buying things that you don't need with money that you don't have. That's robbing you and your family of a future. It's robbing this country out of jobs. So I'm going to ask every American right now, get out your credit cards, cut them up, free yourselves, free yourselves. Don't count on this Congress to help you. This Congress already voted to end Medicare. They're flirting with disaster on this debt right now. I'm asking Americans, take control of your financial
Gentleman's
future.
time has expired.
Get out of debt. Let's demand that this Congress
Gentleman's time
help
has
you get out of
expired.
debt. I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Up to 4 hours of debate on the Republican debt and deficit plan. In addition to our live coverage here on C-SPAN, all of the debate on this bill is being streamed live on Facebook.
Mr. Cleaver.
Well, it's not.
Mr. Cleaver votes no.
On this vote, the yeas are 236, the nays are 177. The resolution is adopted without objection. A motion to reconsider is laid on the table. House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Idaho rise?
Madam Speaker, I present a privileged report for printing under the rule.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
Report to accompany H.R. 2584, a bill making appropriations for the Department of the Interior, Environment, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2012, and for other purposes.
Referred to the Union calendar and ordered printed. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 21, points of order are reserved. Mr. Price? House will be in order. House will be in order. Will all members please take conversations to the back of the chamber or to the cloakrooms? Will members please take conversations off the floor, outside the chamber? For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend the remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 2650.
Without objection, the clerk
Madam
will...
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that Mr. Chaffetz, a member of the Budget Committee, control 30 minutes. Mr. Garrett, the Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, control 30 minutes. And Mr. Jordan control 30 minutes of debate.
Objections.
And, Madam Speaker, with respect to the remaining time, I will reserve the balance of my time and turn it over to Mr. Chaffetz.
Without objection. Does the gentleman from Utah seek to call up the bill?
Pursuant to the rule, I call up H.R. 2560.
Clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 2560, a bill to cut, cap, and balance the federal budget.
Pursuant to House Resolution 355, the bill is considered read. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Chaffetz, and the gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen, each will control 2 hours. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Utah.
Madam Chair, I yield myself such time as I may consent.
Gentlemen, will the gentleman suspend? House is not in order. Gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today is a historic day. We have an opportunity in this body to send a strong signal to the country that we're going to live within our means. At the heart of this discussion is a discussion about whether or not our country is going to live within its means. What we ask for at the heart of this proposal is that we balance our budget. It's something that families do. It's something that businesses do. It's a balanced budget amendment is something that 49 states across the country have. Unfortunately, in Congress's past, presidents have passed, we have not lived within our means. I've heard the argument that says, oh, we don't need a constitutional amendment we don't need a constitutional amendment, we just need to do our jobs. Well, guess what?
Gentlemen, we'll suspend for a moment. The House is not in order. Will all members who wish to have conversations please take them from the floor? And will members and others in the back of the chamber please move your conversations off the floor? Gentlemen may begin again.
So, Madam Speaker, we find this nation more than $14 trillion in debt. We're paying more than $600 million a day in interest on that debt. Now imagine the United States of America without that debt. We don't get anything for that $600 million. But it's an obligation, and we need to live up to those obligations. And what this bill says is very simple. We're going to cut. We're going to make an immediate cut to some spending. A paltry $111 billion in the first year. Number two, we're going to cap as a percentage of our gross domestic product the amount of money that we're going to spend going forward so that there are targets in place for future Congresses to consider and weigh and make the good decisions that need to be made. How are we going to prioritize things? And number three, we are going to seek to have a balanced budget amendment come to the floor of the House, come to the Senate, and pass both bodies. If we can make that historic move and pass to the states a balanced budget amendment, then we will solve the underlying challenge that faces this country. We are spending too much money. I think everybody understands that. But the question is, are we really going to do something about it? The question for the President, the question for this body moving forward is, do we have the fortitude to actually put before the states an amendment? That's all we ask. Can the states have a say in this? To my Senate colleagues, Madam Speaker, I would encourage them. They are to represent the states. What are they afraid of if they won't send a balanced budget amendment forward for their ratification? We have to change the way we do business in Washington, D.C. America gets it. America understands it. But this body, in its history, has not lived up to that call. The future of our nation depends upon it. There's going to be all kinds of rhetoric about how we're cutting Medicare. It's not true. It simply says we're going to have to put ourselves on a glide path to get some fiscal sanity back here. Now, there is a timetable that is before us. We're going to run out of money. We're spending money we don't have. But there's a timetable before us. And so in just 2 weeks, we're going to come upon this deadline. This is a real plan that can solve the solution and something that should be widely embraced on both sides of the aisle. Reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is no time for this body to be playing dangerous games with the American economy and with the American jobs. And yet that's exactly what's going on the floor of this House today. Our Republican colleagues are taking the position that unless and until we accept their radical budget plan, they will prevent the United States from paying its bills. And what does their budget plan do? Yep, it is the same old plan to end the Medicare guarantee, to slash Medicaid, to cut education, while protecting special interest tax breaks like subsidies for big oil companies. And here's what they're saying. Unless we do that, unless we take that, they're going to prevent the United States from paying its bills. Remember, these are bills that are coming due on actions that this Congress has already taken. These are the bills to pay for 2 wars. These are bills to pay for the prescription drug plan that was never paid for. And one of the primary reasons we don't have enough revenue coming in to pay those bills is because of the tax cuts in 2001 and 2003 that disproportionately benefited the very wealthy. It's interesting to hear some of our Republican colleagues who have been here for that entire period of time and voted on all those things, saying that it's a sacrifice for them to accept responsibility for paying the bills for the things they voted for. Imagine if the American people took that position. And what are the consequences of the United States failing to pay its bills? The same thing that would happen to an American family that decided not to pay its bills, whether it's its mortgage, its car payment, whatever it might be. It would undermine the creditworthiness of that American family, and taking that action will undermine the creditworthiness of the United States. That will lead to rises in interest rates and a sinking economy. It would hurt every American family, and it would increase, not decrease, the deficit of the United States. That is the result our Republican colleagues are threatening in this bill if their demands are not met. So let's dig a little deeper into those demands. As I say, what they want to do is impose the same budget plan that they voted on earlier in this House and we debated. It does end the Medicare guarantee, it does slash Medicaid and education, and it does protect corporate tax loopholes. Only this time, it's worse, because they want to take that budget plan and implant it in the Constitution of the United States. Now, nobody in this body should be fooled for one moment. This is not an ordinary balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. We can have that debate, and there are legitimate arguments. This does something very different and very sinister. It manipulates the Constitution of the United States in a way to graft the Republican budget plan into the Constitution. How does it do it? There are two devices, and the gentleman knows them well. The first is it says you can cut Medicare, you can cut Social Security, you can cut education with a majority vote. But if you want to cut a subsidy for a big oil company for the purposes of reducing the deficit, if you want to cut corporate jet loopholes for the purpose of reducing the deficit, that's not a majority vote. That's a supermajority, two-thirds vote. So it biases the Constitution itself in a manner that prefers cuts to Medicare beneficiaries who have a median income of under $22,000 before asking the very wealthiest in our country to return to the same tax rates that were in place during the Clinton administration. Secondly, it says we have to pass a constitutional amendment in the next 2 days that also includes an overall cap on spending. If you look at the bill that came out of the Judiciary Committee, what that would impose is an 18% cap, maybe 18%, maybe 19% in the end, we don't know, but it has to have a cap. And the one that's come out so far has an 18% cap. Now, let's put that number into context. Not since 1966, just after we enacted Medicare to protect our senior citizens from health crises, not since that time has the United States met that level of expenditures. We've been over that level of expenditures. So by putting that cap on, combined with a provision to make it easier to cut Medicare than it is to cut corporate tax subsidies, they are writing into the Constitution itself this bias. They're stacking the constitutional deck in favor of engrafting their budget plan into our founding document. Now, I heard the gentleman say, and we hear it many times, and I hope we won't hear it again on this floor today, 49 of the 50 states have balanced budget amendments. That's true, but they don't have this kind of balanced budget amendment. They don't have balanced budget amendments with these pernicious features, with some exceptions. 14 states have a supermajority requirement written into their Constitution. For a good number of those, it's less than two-thirds, which is what this would require. 16 states write into their Constitution spending caps, and only 7 states in the country combine the two. So let's not talk about how every state can balance the budget, an argument which also ignores the reality that the federal government is not just any old state. It is the federal government of the United States of America, needs to be able to respond to emergencies and wars and the like. So let me close with this, Madam Speaker. We do need to, number one, make sure we pay our bills, and number two, we need to get our deficits under control in a way that help our economy, not hurt it. And that's why the President of the United States put forward a proposal that is modeled on the framework that was put forward by the Simpson-Bowles Commission. It doesn't have every detail in it, but it adopts that framework that says, let's cut the deficit by approximately $4 trillion over the next 10 years. Let's do it in a balanced way. In fact, it's tilted towards spending cuts, $3 of spending cuts for every dollar in revenue. He makes it very clear he wants to get the revenue, closing some of these corporate tax loopholes, asking the top 2% of income earners in the United States to just go back to the rates they were paying during the Clinton administration, a time we all remember when the economy was booming and we created 20 million jobs. So let's take a balanced approach to this. Let's not take the position that if our demands are not met, if we cannot manipulate the Constitution of the United States to engraft our budget plan into that founding document, then we're going to let the United States fail to pay its bills and suffer the terrible economic consequences. It's not so much members in this body that will be suffering those, it's the American people. Let's not do that to the American people.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from Utah.
I would ask the gentleman if he could give us a copy of that plan right now here during this debate. We would certainly appreciate it. The second thing is what we're talking about is a balanced budget. That's really what we're talking about. Now I'd like to recognize for 1 minute the leader, our leader, Mr. Cantor from Virginia.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Utah. Madam Speaker, it is time to be honest with the American people. At a time when our government borrows 40 cents of every dollar it spends, we've got no choice but to cut spending and begin living within our means. Contrary to what the gentleman on the other side of the aisle continues to say, no one wants to bring default onto our country. And with millions of Americans out of work, we've got to focus on getting the economy growing again. We, as Republicans, as the new majority in this House, as the gentleman from Maryland knows, have put a plan on the table that ensures Washington does not continue to spend money it doesn't have. House Republicans have a plan to cut, cap, and balance our way to prosperity. This common-sense legislation provides a straightforward plan to curb our massive debt and to finally begin to limit spending. The legislation before us would require 1, a balanced budget component, 2, a supermajority requirement to raise taxes on the American people, and 3, a limit on spending as a percentage of GDP. Madam Speaker, today the House has the opportunity to show the people that sent us here that we are serious about turning the page on the failed fiscal policies that this town has been about over the last several decades and begin to get the fiscal house in order. House Republicans were voted into office to change the culture in Washington, and we will not support the other side's request or the President's request to increase the debt limit without meaningful reforms to the system. 49 states, including my home state of Virginia, already have a balanced budget requirement, and it's time that the federal government reflect the same policy to get our fiscal house in order. Cut, cap, and balance make sure that we begin to treat taxpayer dollars more responsibly, just like families and businesses do with their own budgets. We need to act today. We cannot continue to kick the can down the road. Madam Speaker, the President continues to say, as the gentleman on the other side tries to imply as well, that they want to do big things. We do as well, as evidenced by our budget that we put on the table. But we implore the other side to get serious. Let's do big things. Let's get our fiscal house in order. But let's do so without imposing higher taxes on the small business people that we so desperately need to start hiring again. And the gentleman from Maryland loves to talk about those corporate loopholes. He loves to talk about corporate jet owners and the kind of preferences that exist in the code. The gentleman from Maryland knows all too well. He and I were in discussions for almost 7 weeks when I said again and again that we would be happy to engage in a discussion of tax reform to get rid of those loopholes. The gentleman also knows that those loopholes and the costs associated with those loopholes pale in comparison to the problem. So I know it makes for good politics to go throw the shiny ball out there, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman yield?
That I will not yield.
All right.
To throw the shiny ball out there that somehow Republicans are wed to that kind of policy to sustain these preferences, when all along, in our budget and in our plan, we have said we're for tax reform. We have said we're for bringing down rates on everybody. And that's it, Madam Speaker. Let's get serious and stop playing politics. It's not about that. There is no disagreement that any of us want to support those loopholes. But what's really going on, Madam Speaker, in all of the debt discussions, in all of the negotiations, is the fact that the minority and its party and the President continue to insist that we raise taxes on the small business people that we need so desperately to begin creating jobs and hiring people again. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish the gentleman had yielded, because I think it would have become very clear that the Republican position is they won't close a tax loophole that generates 1 penny for deficit reduction. Not 1 penny. So you can't close a corporate jet loophole if it's going to deficit reduction. You can't say to the oil and gas companies, we're going to end your subsidy if it's going to go for if it's going to go for deficit reduction. We all know there are a lot of Washington lobbyists that manipulate the tax code around here. Getting a tax break, a taxpayer giveaway through the tax code, is just like getting something through spending. And yet our Republican colleagues refuse to allow any cut in a loophole to go to deficit reduction. Not 1 penny. Again, we heard it from the majority leader. We're going to hear it, I guess, all day. 49 out of 50 states have balanced budget amendments. This is not the kind of balanced budget amendment the states have. This writes into the Constitution of the United States, again, a preference for cutting Medicare and Social Security. That requires a majority vote. But in order to close one of those corporate tax loopholes for the purpose of reducing the deficit, you need a 2/3 vote. You're going to embed into the Constitution of the United States those policy preferences. That is exactly what this does. So let's not hear about the 49 states. They don't all have these spending caps, and they don't all have that preference protecting special interest tax breaks from use for deficit reduction. And with that, I yield to our distinguished leader of the Democratic caucus, Mr. Larson.
How much time does the gentleman yield to the gentleman from Connecticut? Gentleman from Maryland, how much time is yielded?
I apologize. 3 minutes.
Gentleman from Connecticut is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to associate myself with the remarks of the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, Mr. Van Hollen. Now, let me say that in his opening comments, I think he's laid it out pretty well. Cut, cap, and balance. One has to resist on our side the notion that this is cut, cap, and get rid of Medicare. The public has had it with this theater of the absurd that's going on. They want Congress to come together, as our President has suggested, and do the most important thing that we can, create jobs for the American people. At Augie and Ray's, in my hometown, people ask me what's going on. Seems like a light beer commercial where there's this endless quibbling back and forth with people on both sides of the aisle who care deeply about their country but seem to do little about putting the nation back to work. We face a crisis with a debt ceiling that 17 times under Ronald Reagan was lifted without any bill being held hostage, and clearly not programs like Medicare and Social Security. This is a time for us to come together and reason in a rational process. There are no immediate tax impositions placed by the President. All of you who have been in the negotiations understand and know that. In fact, this Congress, when we were in the majority, passed the largest tax cut for the middle class, the largest tax cut. I continue to believe that the people in my hometown have it right, that the issue is about jobs. We cannot take this nation up to the precipice, up to the cliff again, and risk endangerment of default. As Ronald Reagan said, this would be a catastrophe for this country to allow this to take place. We need to stay at the table and continue to negotiate around the idea of jobs, taking a look at those things strategically that can be cut that create jobs, and those revenues that can be enhanced to create jobs, to put the American people back to work. That's what the American people want to see. The Congress that can come together. I stand by our President, by this great chairman, in making sure that we don't go through this theater of the absurd. You know that this is not a true balanced budget amendment. You know that in your heart. You have talent and good people on your side, as do we. Let's be about putting America back to work and create jobs. Let's not talk about defaulting on the nation or defaulting on the American people. Let's talk about putting them back to work. That's what we need to do in this nation.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Utah.
For 2 years under Barack Obama, the Democrats had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. You didn't do a thing to touch those so-called loopholes. To try to feign how exasperated you are at this point is somewhat disingenuous to somebody who sat here for 2 years with you having the House, the Senate, and the presidency and doing nothing about it. What we're fighting for is more taxpayers, not more taxes. When the president said he was going to veto this bill, it provided a whole lot of clarity to a guy like me. Because if we can't find common ground on balancing the budget, how dare we offer that we want to balance the budget? That's all we ask for in this country, is put us on a trajectory to balance the budget. With that, I'll yield 2 minutes.
The gentleman will suspend. The chair will remind members that all remarks should be addressed to the chair. Thank you. Gentleman from Utah.
Madam Chair, I now recognize the gentleman from Georgia, who's the chairman of the House Policy Committee, Mr. Price of Georgia.
For how much time?
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I'll tell you that my friend talks about the theater of the absurd. I'll tell you what's absurd. It's saying that they have a plan when they have no plan at all. That's what's absurd. That we are here today dealing with this challenge ought not be a surprise to anybody. Decade after decade, Congress after Congress, President after President, they have borrowed too much, spent too much, and taxed too much, which is why our new majority, now just over 6 months in office, has put forward positive, substantive proposals to change the way that Washington does business. It's exactly what America is demanding. Our challenges are huge, but solutions based upon principle is exactly what is needed, and hence this current bill, with short-term, mid-term, and long-term solutions. In the short term, responsible, appropriate spending reductions. In the midterm, limit and control federal spending as a percent of gross domestic product. And in the long term, stop the madness. Force Washington to do what every single family in this country does and every single business in this country does, and that is to balance our budget. President Obama has issued a veto threat, saying essentially that balancing the budget is an unrealistic policy goal. This is an administration that says it wants to do big things. Mr. President, is getting our debt and deficit under control too much to ask? Is that too big, Mr. President? What is unrealistic is to assume that we can spend at the levels that President Obama and congressional Democrats have done over the past few years, amass trillion-dollar annual deficits, and still have a vibrant economy. Now that's unrealistic. Putting America's fiscal house in order is not only realistic and achievable, it's imperative. It's imperative in order to get our economy moving again and creating jobs. This bill is a positive solution, a common-sense solution, an honest solution, and a bold solution. I encourage my colleagues to support this bill and begin to travel on a path to prosperity. And I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to make a couple points in response to statements that had been raised. Not only would this write in the Constitution a two-thirds requirement for getting rid of special interest tax breaks for the purposes of deficit reduction, it would make it easier to create new special interest tax loopholes than to eliminate them. If a Washington lobbyist is pushing for a big special break, you can do that with a majority vote under this constitutional amendment. But if you want to eliminate one of those special interest tax loopholes, whoops, you need two-thirds vote. Now, let's be very clear on what the President has said. Yes, we want to close those corporate loopholes. He's also been very clear that beginning in 2013, we should go back to asking the very top income earners to pay the same rates they were paying during the Clinton administration, which, as I said, was a time when the economy was booming. Now, every time we mention that fact, we hear our Republican colleagues talk about small business and how they're going to protect small business. When you hear that language, you really know that they're using that as cover to protect some of these big special interests. Why do I say that? We agree that small businesses are the engine of this economy. But if you look at the Joint Tax Committee report, July 12, 2010, nonpartisan, they say that 3% of all businesses would be even impacted. Only 3%. Less than 3% of all businesses would be impacted by the President's proposal, those that file as S corporations. And then it goes on to provide a warning here, specifically saying, beware, because these entities might not be small. In quotes, in fact, they say in 2005, over 12,000 S corporations and 6,000 partnerships had receipts of more than $50 million. Among those are KKR, Price Waterhouse. Now, these are all good businesses, but I would ask my colleagues whether they are small businesses. And let's not use the rhetoric of small businesses to protect preferences for the big guys. We all need to share responsibility for getting this deficit under control. We need a balanced approach to doing that. And with that, I yield 3 minutes to my colleague on the Budget Committee, Ms. Schwartz.
Gentlewoman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate the comments of the ranking member and this discussion. Let me be very clear. Let me start by just saying that Republicans continue to play politics rather than do its best to this country, particularly to do what is responsible at a critical time for our nation. They are once again holding American families and American businesses hostage by threatening to allow the United States to default on our debt, to not meet our responsibilities until their extreme ideological demands are met. Their plan is not a balanced approach to what is right for our country. It ends Medicare guarantee for our seniors. Should I repeat that? It ends the Medicare guarantee for our seniors, and it slashes education and opportunity for the next generation of Americans. It inhibits our ability to foster an environment for private sector economic growth by cutting any chance of investment in scientific research and technology, in roads, bridges, and highways, and access to higher education, to the very, very kinds of actions we need to take to establish an atmosphere for private sector growth in this nation, whether large or small business. And the Republican plan is disastrous at a very fragile time in our economic recovery. It will devastate America's future economic competitiveness. The Republican majority has yet to produce legislation that puts the American economy back on track and Americans back to work. This legislation guarantees that we won't meet our obligations as a nation to our seniors or to our children, and it will dramatically reduce our ability to compete in a global economy. Make no mistake, the Republican plan, and always has been, to cut Social Security and Medicare, to cap economic opportunity, and to balance the budget on the backs of middle-class families. Cut, cap, and balance is bad for American families, bad for American businesses, and bad for our nation's economy now and into the future, and we should not let it pass. And I yield back.
Gentleman from Utah.
Madam Speaker, the only thing cut, cap, and balance is bad for is for members of Congress, because we're going to have to actually rein in spending. They're actually going to have to live within a balanced budget. I would also highlight for the record Rule 21, Section 5B. You know, the gentleman has, I've heard a lot of rhetoric in the news and other places about how there's going to be this such higher standard. Should be noted that the passage of a tax rate increase under this section, a bill or joint resolution, amendment, or conference report carrying a federal income tax rate increase may not be considered as passed or agreed to unless as so determined by a vote of not less than 3/5 of the members voting. It was that same standard and threshold when Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House as it is today. So we've had that higher standard in raising taxes. That is nothing new. At this time, I'd now like to recognize for 2 minutes a gentleman from Wisconsin, a freshman member, Mr. Ribble.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 2560, the Cut, Cap, and Balance Act of 2011. To put our nation back on the path to prosperity, government needs to truly live within its means. And that means Congress must be required to pass budgets that spend the same amount of money that comes in. Just last weekend, S&P announced that they were reviewing Americans' AAA bond rating. They warned if Congress and the President couldn't reach an agreement to structurally reform our spending and debt problems, not just raising the debt ceiling, our country will face the risk of having its bond rating downgraded. This will not only result in higher borrowing rates for businesses and individuals, but also stifle new job creation and capital investment. We simply cannot allow this to happen. A few days ago, President Obama said, "We need to eat our peas." Well, I couldn't agree more. Our bloated and obese federal budget needs a healthy and balanced diet, one that trims the fat of overspending and grows the muscle of our nation's economy. And that's exactly what H.R. 2560 does. It provides a balanced approach to our nation's fiscal problems. And there's nothing more balanced than a balanced budget. There's nothing more American than permitting the states, and more importantly, the American people, to have a voice in the direction this nation will take. There's nothing more prudent than stepping forward and leading today so that our children and grandchildren will have a better future tomorrow. The future of our country is on the line, and if this body wants to ensure a brighter and more prosperous future for our children and grandchildren, we must fundamentally change Washington's spending habits. It's time to cut up the federal credit card and stop placing this government's out-of-control spending habits onto the backs of future generations. This bill does exactly that, and I'm proud to support it. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back.
And yields back. Gentleman from Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The sponsor of the bill mentioned some House rules. I think he's well aware that you can always waive House rules by majority vote. Thank goodness you cannot just waive the Constitution of the United States. Our founders made it difficult to get bad ideas into the Constitution. And again, I want to make it clear, this is not your garden variety balanced budget amendment. This has manipulated the Constitution of the United States itself in a way that makes it easier to cut Medicare, easier to cut Social Security, easier to cut education than it is to cut corporate tax loopholes for the purpose of reducing the deficit. It's right in there. And with that, I yield 3 minutes to Ms. McCollum, a good member of the Budget Committee.
Gentlewoman from Minnesota is recognized for how many minutes? Excuse me. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The bill on the floor right now is a political gimmick. It's a stunt. It's not a serious effort. But this bill does reflect Republican values. This Republican bill protects the wealthiest Americans. This Republican bill plummets seniors and the middle class. And no surprise, this bill panders, even grovels to the Tea Party extremists. This bill will end the Medicare guarantee. This bill will kill jobs. And thank goodness, this bill will never pass the United States Senate. This bill will never become law. The Republican majority is wasting precious time as the clock ticks and ticks closer to default and economic disaster. The Republican majority is choosing to bring America to the brink of default for reasons that have everything to do with politics and nothing to do with reasonable governing. The American people reject the Tea Party's dangerous brand of Armageddon economics. It's time to take responsibility for paying America's bills and raise the debt ceiling without Tea Party gimmicks and games. This Congress needs to take a serious stand and get busy creating jobs and putting people back to work and getting this economy growing. Let's end the debate on this radical legislation right now. Let's get to the real work of cutting deficits, creating jobs, and growing the economy. Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Utah.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd now like to recognize for 2 minutes the gentleman from Texas, member of the House Budget Committee, Mr. Flores.
Gentleman's recognized.